Chapter 3969. His voice was low and solemn, and his handsome and resolute face had a serious expression. He looked at her and continued, "You know very well that if we send the children into your space at the slightest sign of danger, as time passes, the secret of the heaven-defying space will be exposed. Moreover, everything is like this. After a long time, you and I will have a habit of sending the children into the space at the slightest sign of danger. Perhaps we want to protect them, but who knows this is not harming them?" Hearing this, Fengjiu stared at him blankly. For a moment, she was speechless because she knew that he was telling the truth. When our children are in danger, as parents, we are the most worried. However, in the future, there will be many dangers and difficulties waiting for them on the road of their growth. We can't protect them forever. The only thing we can do is to protect them when they are young and teach them how to protect themselves. He exhaled softly and said slowly, "Even if we encountered such danger this time, we have learned a lesson. Because we have encountered it before, we can try to avoid the same thing from happening again." Fengjiu looked at him deeply. After a long time, she nodded and said, "Yes, I know. You are right. I rely too much on the space. Whenever something happens, I want to send the two children in." Xianyuan Mose held her hand and comforted her in a soft voice. "Don't blame yourself. Calm down. The children still need your help to treat them." When he said this, Fengjiu finally reacted. Looking at the two crying children who had fallen asleep, she quickly reached out to check their temperature and then quickly stood up. "You stay here and take care of them. I will go and get some medicine." The two children couldn't take ordinary medicine, so she would make some medicine that they could take and wouldn't hurt them. Xianyuan Mose watched as she pulled herself together. Only then did his furrowed brows loosen up, and the expression on his face gradually relaxed as well. He looked at the two children sleeping on the bed. Their faces were red, and they seemed to be extremely uncomfortable. Even though they were asleep, their little faces were slightly wrinkled, and there were still tears at the corners of their eyes. He helped the two children pull up the small quilt on their bodies, then stood up and walked to the outer room. He fetched some cold water and two small towels, soaked them in it and wrung them dry, then carefully applied them to their foreheads. Perhaps it was because they felt the coldness, the two little fellows moved slightly. Their small mouths flattened, their noses sniffed, and they fell asleep again. Fengjiu went to help the two children concoct the medicinal liquid, while Du Fan and the others cleaned up the area outside. Leng Hua helped the injured Leng Shuang, Qin Xian, and by Qin Chang to their rooms, bandaged their wounds, and fed them medicinal pills. After cleaning up the things outside, Hui Lang and Ying Yi looked at each other and stood at the door. They wanted to go in, but they didn't dare to. After all, it was their fault for not protecting them well. "Ying Yi, why don't you go in and take a look?" Hui Lang nudged Ying Yi beside him, motioning for him to go in and take a look. Ying Yi paused for a moment, then walked in. As soon as he saw Ying Yi enter, Hui Lang quickly followed. Chapter 3970. As he spoke, he took the small basin of water away and replaced it with a new one. "Master, it's my fault for not protecting them well. Please punish me." He knelt down on one knee to beg for forgiveness. Hui Lang placed the basin of water beside the bed. Seeing Ying kneel down, he hurriedly knelt down as well and said, "Please punish me, master." Xianyuan Mose glanced at them and said, "Go and treat your wounds. Don't disturb the children here." Hearing this, Hui Lang raised his head to look at his master. Seeing that he had no intention of punishing them, he couldn't help but look at Ying Yi. Seeing Ying Yi nod and stand up, he rubbed his nose and hurriedly stood up and quietly left. When the two of them left, Du Fan and the others came up to them and asked, "How are they? How are the two young masters?" "They caught a cold. Master is using cold towels to cool them down. Madam has gone to prepare medicine," Hui Lang said as he turned to look at the room. Master and Madam had also been injured in the fight. Although it was only a superficial wound, it looked like there was a lot of blood flowing out of the wound. It seemed to have coagulated, but they hadn't cleaned and bandaged it. Thinking of this, Hui Lang said, "Master's wound hasn't been bandaged yet. I'd better go in." As he said this, he prepared to leave. However, just as he turned around, he was stopped by Du Fan. "What are you doing?" Hui Lang looked at him. "You don't have to go," Du Fan said as he shook his head and said, "The Yama Lord and Master are both injured. However, the wounds were caused by the airflow when they fought. It's not a big deal. The Yama Lord is taking care of the two young masters now. Master has gone to prepare medicine. You don't have to go in. When Master comes back, he will help the Yama Lord dress their wounds." Hearing this, Hui Lang thought for a moment and said, "All right, then I won't go." As he said this, he looked at Lung Hua and said, "Lung Hua, how are their injuries? Are your injuries serious?" Hearing his question, Lung Hua said warmly, "My sister and the others are all seriously injured. I've already helped them back to their rooms to rest and fed them some medicinal pills. Fan Lin just want to see them. He said that they have internal injuries and need to rest for a few days. It's not a big deal." "That's good." Hui Lang nodded. They had a lot of medicinal pills for treating internal injuries. No matter how serious the internal injuries were, as long as one took the medicinal pills and recuperated for a few days, they would gradually recover. Du Fan glanced at the inn and said, "Since the inn has been destroyed to this extent, I'll go talk to the innkeeper and give him some compensation." With that, he turned around and left. "I'll go and prepare some hot water for my master and the Yama Lord." As Lung Hua said this, he also turned around and left. He felt that the two of them might want to wash off the smell of blood on their bodies later. Hui Lang and Yi simply treated their injuries and kept watch outside the room until the door of the next room creaked open and Fengjiu came out with medicine. Only then did the two of them go up to greet him. "Madam, have you made the medicine that the two young masters can take?" Hui Lang hurriedly asked. "Yes," Fengjiu replied. He glanced at the two of them and said, "You two rest for a while. There's no need to keep watch here." With that, he went into the room first. "How is it? Did the temperature drop a little?" Fengjiu asked softly, his gaze falling on the two children. Chapter 3971. I've added some medicine that can calm a mind. Give it to them later, and they'll be fine. As Fengjiu spoke, she stepped forward and picked up one of the children. Perhaps it was because he wasn't feeling well, but her hug woke him up. She saw the child's small mouth flatten, and he started to cry. "Son, be good. Mother is here. Take the medicine, and you'll be fine." She softly coaxed him. She then called out to Hui Lang outside and asked him to bring a small bowl and spoon. "Madam, a small bowl and spoon." Hui Lang hurriedly brought the things over and then stood to the side to watch. He wanted to help more to lessen the self-reproach in his heart. "How much do you want?" Xin Yuan Mose asked. He placed the bowl on the small table and unscrewed the lid, preparing to pour out the medicinal liquid. "Drink 2 spoonfuls," Fengjiu said as she held the child and touched his forehead. She saw that her daughter had also started to cry after hearing her brother's cries. The two children were crying loudly, making people who heard them very worried. Hui Lang couldn't help but step forward and said, "Let me carry the little master." He stepped forward and carried little Yu from the bed and carefully coaxed her. Xin Yuan Mose poured out a spoonful and placed it next to the child's mouth. But the child refused to drink and struggled to cry. Seeing this, Fengjiu could only hold him down and said to Xin Yuan Mose, "Pour it." Hearing this, Xin Yuan Mose paused for a moment and watched her hold the child down. Only then did he carefully feed the medicine to the child's small mouth, which was opened because his nose was pinched. The little fellow swallowed and burst into tears again. His heart ached for her, but he could only quickly feed her another spoonful. After the other spoonful was fed, he hurriedly said, Okay, quickly let go of your hand." Hearing this, Fengjiu glanced at him and gently patted the child's back with one hand while softly coaxing him. "Son, be good. It's all right now." Perhaps it was because of Fengjiu's gentle voice that the child gradually stopped crying. He just blinked his eyes with his eyelashes stuck together and looked at Fengjiu pitifully. Seeing the child's long eyelashes slightly stuck together, Fengjiu couldn't help but sigh softly. He held the child's small hand and said, "It's okay, mother is here." She put down the child in her arms and covered him with a blanket. Then, she carried her daughter in Hui Lang's arms and fed her 2 spoonfuls of the medicine. When Hui Lang saw that the two children gradually calmed down and stopped crying, he left the room. The two of them sat by the bed and looked at the sleeping child. They couldn't help but look at each other and smile. Compared to before, she seemed to be much better. Will the children's fever go down tonight? Xin Yuan Mose asked. Because they're still young, I didn't give them a lot of medicine. Their fever won't go down very quickly, but they should be much better by tomorrow morning. As Feng Jiu spoke, she looked at the dried wounds on his body and said, Your wounds also need to be treated. At this time, Hui Lang poked his head in from outside and said, Master, madam, the water for bathing has already been prepared. Hearing this, Xin Yuan Mose said, You go bathe first. Treat your wounds first. Seeing this, Feng Jiu didn't refuse. After she went to bathe, Xin Yuan Mose also went to wash off the smell of blood on his body. When he came out, Feng Jiu had already prepared the medicine. Seeing him come over, she said, Sit here. I'll help you clean your wounds. Chapter 3972. Hearing this, Feng Jiu looked at him and nodded. Yes, let's go back once we're done. She also wanted to bring the two children back to meet her parents and grandfather. Now that she had obtained the ancient golden lotus, although she could not merge with it, she had obtained an unexpected surprise here. Emo-chan was still alive in this world. To them, this was the best news, the best surprise. In a house, opposite a monk sat a Taoist with a sage-like demeanor. The two of them did not sleep in the middle of the night. Instead, they sat in the courtyard with a game of chess and 2 cups of hot tea in front of them. You knew there would be trouble, so you hid here? The Taoist stroked his beard and smiled at the monk in front of him. The monk placed a chess piece down and said, How can the place where the emperor and Feng Xing appeared be peaceful? The emperor and Feng Xing's son and daughter are also here, right? That day, when the 4 monarchs came to congratulate us, I was very curious. I really want to meet the 2 children who were congratulated by everyone. The monk took a sip of tea and said slowly, You and I have known each other for many years. You don't have to use words to test me. Heaven's secrets cannot be revealed. Whatever you want to know, I cannot tell you. Hearing this, the Taoist's eyes flashed and the smile on his face deepened. Seems like there really is something that cannot be said. Seeing that the monk pursed his lips and did not want to reveal anything, he did not ask further. He only said, When do you plan to go back? The monk glanced at him and said, This poor monk has just arrived at your place. Haha, good. If you want to stay, then stay. The Taoist smiled and placed a chess piece down. Compared to the blood and slaughter outside, the house was very quiet and secluded. The two of them played chess and occasionally chatted. It wasn't until the next morning that the monk stood up and said, This poor monk will take his leave. Hearing this, the Taoist was stunned. You're leaving? He looked at him strangely and said, Didn't you just come? Why do you want to leave? Let's go and take a look. As the monk said this, he put his palms together and bowed. When he turned to leave, he stopped and looked back at the Taoist, saying, Don't follow me. Hearing this, the Taoist was stunned for a moment. Then he laughed. Good, I will send you out. As he said this, he stood up to send him off. Because of the battle last night, many families and cultivators in the city had their eyes on the inn. However, no one dared to offend or inquire about it. They only knew that last night, the infamous Demon King and the master behind the auction house had been killed in this place. Firstly, they were surprised that the owner of the auction house was so powerful. Secondly, they were shocked that someone could kill both the Azura King and the owner of the auction house. This level of strength shocked everyone in the city. They didn't dare to approach, but they also looked at the ruined inn from a place not far from the inn. No one dared to take half a step within 10 meters of the inn until they saw a monk leisurely walking towards the inn. Does that monk want to die? Why is he going to the inn? A cultivator standing far away stared at the monk. Chapter 3973. This monk seems to have followed these people into the city last time, a cultivator whispered. Yes, I seem to remember it too. He should be with them. Who is this monk? He seems to be a monk from the Million Buddhist sect. The whispers of the crowd did not make the monk react at all. He walked slowly to the front of the inn step by step and entered. Master is back. Du Fan looked at him with a smile. We wanted to send you a message because my master said that he was ready to leave. The monk put his palms together and returned the greeting, saying, How are the benefactors? Haha, certainly not as good as you. Du Fan said with a smile, his eyes lingering on the monk. The monk seemed to know what would happen. As soon as he entered the city, he said that he was going to visit an old friend. After the matter was settled, he came back. Ba, the monk murmured softly. Master is here. Feng Jiu came out from the second floor and said with a smile, It's so early. Master, you haven't had breakfast yet, have you? The monk looked up at Feng Jiu and saw that there was a bit of evil spirit on her. He withdrew his gaze and murmured softly, Ba, I'm relieved to see that you are well. Hearing this, Feng Jiu raised her eyebrows and chuckled. Master, you said that there would be a bloody disaster on this trip. Are you referring to last night? The monk put his palms together and shook his head gently, saying, No. Feng Jiu smiled and walked down the stairs. Yes, I only suffered some superficial wounds last night. If you said that there would be a bloody disaster and asked me to be careful, it would naturally not be at this level. She slowly walked in front of him with a smile on her face. She said, I really want to know what kind of thing will cause me a bloody disaster. Heaven's secret cannot be revealed, the monk said slowly. Feng Jiu smiled and said, Master, sit here. I'll get them to prepare breakfast for you. As she spoke, she looked at Leng Hua. Leng Hua smiled gently and gestured to the monk. Great master, this way please. He invited the monk to sit to the side and asked the waiter to serve breakfast. Feng Jiu said a few words to Du Fan and the others before returning to the room upstairs. Outside, Xin Yuan Mose sat cross-legged and adjusted his breathing. After he had consumed the elixir that Feng Jiu had refined for him, he circulated his qi to catalyze the effects of the elixir. When he circulated his qi in the morning, he felt all the qi in his body flowing away, especially in his legs. He could feel the energy gathering in his veins. Knowing that Feng Jiu had entered, he exhaled softly and retracted his aura. Only then did he open his eyes and look at Feng Jiu. How is it? Feng Jiu asked as she walked in front of him. Xin Yuan Mose stood up and his feet touched the ground. He felt that his legs had recovered to their original state. In fact, they were even stronger than before. Feeling the strength in his legs returning, he smiled and said, Your elixir is very useful. Chapter 30-974. Xin Yuan Mose knew that she wanted to go alone to complete the task assigned by the Million Buddha sect, so he said, that's good. The movement here is too big, so it's not good to stay here for a long time. Let them prepare and recuperate when they get there. After saying that, he looked into the inner room and asked, How are the children? Are they better? Don't worry. I just checked. Their fever has gone down, and last night's medicine has a calming effect. They slept very well and haven't woken up yet. Let them sleep for a while and give them something to eat later. Speaking of the two children, Feng Jiu's face was full of gentleness. When she saw the two children were sick, she was worried. When she saw the two children recover, that kind of feeling of relief really made her deeply understand how difficult it was to be a mother. The two went to the inner room to see the children. They saw the two children on the big bed getting familiar with each other. Their soft and cute little faces had returned to their normal pink color. Bubbles were coming out of their little mouths, and they were sleeping soundly. Little Mu Chun, who was wearing a sky blue little robe, slept very properly. He didn't move when he was asleep and kept the same posture. However, little Yu who was wearing a pink little robe, was very active. She turned over on her side and slapped her brother's face with her chubby little hand. Feng Jiu was so scared that he hurriedly reached out to block it. Xin Yuan Mose looked at his daughter, who didn't even sleep properly, and broke out in a cold sweat for his son. Little Yu's small hand slapped over when she turned over. If he hadn't blocked it, he reckoned that this slap would have left an additional palm print on that little fellow's face, and she would have started crying. When he saw Feng Jiu carefully move his daughter away, he couldn't help but shake his head. With a touch of helplessness on his face, he said, Little Yu will probably be a mischievous master in the future. At that time, I'm afraid that even Mu Chun, her brother, will be eaten by her. Hearing this, Feng Jiu couldn't help but chuckle. It's good that our daughter is mischievous. Don't tell me she wants to be like you, a big block of ice. What's more, my son is so young, yet he looks like you. Fortunately, little you, can tease him in the future. The two of you can complement each other. Yes, you're right. Xin Yuan Mose replied with a doting smile. Naturally, he would not refute her words. Go and tidy up. Do you want to eat downstairs, or get someone to bring it in? After eating something, we can get ready to leave. Feng Jiu said as she looked at the two sleeping children on the bed, intending to wake them up and eat something. I'll get someone to send it in. You eat some too, Xin Yuan Mose said, then walked out and told Hui Lang, who was waiting outside. Not long after, a sumptuous breakfast was brought in. Hui Lang poked his head into the room and asked, Master, are the two young masters feeling better? There's porridge in the kitchen. Do you want me to bring it over for the two young masters? Their fever has already subsided, Xin Yuan Mo said, then glanced inside and said, Go and bring it over. Okay, Hui Lang replied and hurriedly retreated to the kitchen to bring in the porridge. Chapter 3975. Xin Yuan Mose, who was at the side, saw that the two children were full of energy and revealed a faint smile. He reached out to rub his daughter's hair and saw the little fellow poking her head out from her mother's embrace. Her chubby little hands grabbed his hand and stuffed it into her mouth. Looks like she's hungry. He retracted his hand and didn't let the little fellow stuff the food into her mouth. He got up and brought the cooked porridge over from the table and carefully fed it to her. Wear a scarf to avoid dirtying your clothes, Feng Jiu said as he tied a small scarf around little Yu and little Mu Chen's necks. She held the two children in her arms, and Xin Yuan Mose fed them. After they were full, she let Feng Jiu put the two children on the bed and let her eat something. Downstairs, Du Fan and the others were preparing. Lung Shuang and the others also came out of the room. They had suffered internal injuries, and even though they had taken medicine to treat their internal injuries, their faces were still slightly pale. After all, the Demon King's strength wasn't weak, and he didn't show any mercy. If they didn't have medicine to treat their internal injuries, they reckoned that they wouldn't be able to get out of bed today. I prepared a few carriages. Later on, you all will sit in the one behind the masters. The last one will be for the Great Master and Qi Kong. Du Fan looked at Lung Shuang, Qin Xian, and Bai Qingsheng as he spoke. Originally, there wasn't a need for so many carriages. However, since everyone was injured, he prepared 2 more so that everyone could have a good rest on the road. Have Master and the others eaten breakfast? Lung Shuang asked. It's been sent up. They should be almost done eating by now. Du Fan said as he looked upstairs. He saw the door open and 2 people carrying the children came out. Master! Lung Shuang and the others bowed and called out. How are your injuries? Are you feeling better? Feng Jiu asked as his gaze fell on the 3 of them. After taking the medicine, I feel much better. That's good. Rest more on the road. If the journey is fast, we can reach our destination in 2 days. Feng Jiu carried the children in his arms and went downstairs with Xin Yuan Mose. When they arrived downstairs, they saw that the Great Master was already sitting at the side, chanting scriptures. They smiled and called out, Great Master, we should set off. The monk opened his eyes and looked at them. Then he stood up, put his palms together, and murmured a Buddhist mantra. Then he walked to their side. His gaze swept across the faces of the 2 cute children in their arms before he retracted his gaze. Feng Jiu didn't notice. He just let Lung Shuang and the others get on the carriages first. Then he walked with Xin Yuan Mose to the carriages and listened to Du Fan and the others. It wasn't until everyone got on the carriages that the 3 carriages went out of the city. 2 days later, in the evening, Du Fan and Lu Yun were waiting for their master's arrival at the city gate. As they had to settle everything in order to live in the city, the 2 of them came first on their swords and found a good house in the city. When they arrived, they could move in. Calculating the time, they should arrive at this time. How long do we plan to stay here? Master is going to do something. Do we need to go with him? Seeing that the carriages hadn't arrived yet, Lu Yun started talking to Du Fan. Chapter 3976. Hearing this, Lu Yun glanced at him and asked in surprise, "Why? Do you think it will take a long time for Master to help the Million Buddhist sect?" "This is just one of the reasons. After all, if it is not really difficult, they can handle it by themselves. Why do they need Master to help them? What's more, the monk's strength is not low." Du Fan said slowly. He closed the fan in his hand and held it behind his back. His eyes flashed slightly, and he said, "As for the second reason, this area is now ownerless, and Master is here. Since we are here, how can we not take it? Based on Master and the Yama Lord's power, it won't be difficult for them to take over this place. However, Master's powers have yet to return to their peak. If you really want to do this, I reckon that you'll have to stay here for a while." As soon as Lu Yun finished speaking, he saw a carriage not far from the city slowly approaching. Looking at the carriage, he smiled and said, "Look, Master and the others are here." Du Fan looked out of the city with a smile on his face and said, "It's earlier than expected. I guess they didn't have much rest on the way. Fortunately, we have tidied up the house, so they can rest when they come." While talking, the two men stepped forward to take them into the city. Unexpectedly, before they left the city, the three carriages that were about to enter the city were stopped by the guards in the city. Seeing this scene, the two men looked at each other and quickly stepped forward. "Get off the carriage and walk into the city." The city guard shouted sternly, pointing the sword in his hand at the carriage. Lung Hua drove the carriage. When he saw the city guards shouting at them to get off the carriage, the gentle smile on his face disappeared. He glanced at the city guards and finally fixed his eyes on a captain of the city guards. He asked, "Is the rule in the city not to allow carriages to enter the city?" The gentle voice inexplicably made the city guard captain's hair stand on end. He looked up and saw that the man who spoke had a gentle smile on his face. He looked like a cultured and refined person and did not have the slightest bit of killing power. Thus, he coughed lightly and said, "That's right. Those who enter the city have to get off the carriage and walk into the city." However, just as he finished speaking, two carriages arrived behind them. Furthermore, the carriages were accompanied by guards. The carriages did not stop in the slightest when they entered the city. They directly headed toward the city gate and into the city. Looking at this scene, Lung Hua smiled and asked, "Then why did they go in?" The captain of the city guards frowned and said, "How is that the same? How is it different?" Lung Hua asked, "You are from outside the city, but there are aristocratic families in the city. The carriages all have the symbol of aristocratic families. As long as you are a member of an aristocratic family in the city, you can naturally ride a carriage into the city. The rule of getting off the carriage and walking into the city is only for outsiders." As the captain of the city guard spoke, he saw that the people in the three carriages did not get off and were still blocking the city gate. His face immediately darkened with displeasure. "Hurry up and get off the carriage. Otherwise, turn around and leave." His arrogant words were harsh. He clearly thought that they were ordinary people from outside the city. Lung Hua and the others all had their auras restrained. If one wasn't a true expert, they really wouldn't be able to see through their true strength. Chapter 3977. What's going on? Why are you blocking the way? Can't you see that you're blocking the way in and out? A displeased voice sounded from behind Lung Hua's carriage. Outside the city gates, a luxurious carriage was preparing to enter the city. However, because Lung Hua's carriage was blocking most of the city gates, the other side was empty and there were some commoners walking in and out. This way, the luxurious carriage was half blocked from entering the city. After all, this carriage wasn't as low profile as the previous carriages. Not only was this carriage luxurious, it was also larger than a normal carriage by half, which was why it couldn't enter the city. On the left, right, and behind the carriage, there was a group of 30 or so people. These people were travel-worn and seemed to have just returned from somewhere else. There was a trace of exhaustion on their faces. At this moment, they were blocked at the city gates and couldn't enter. All of their expressions were somewhat unsightly. When the city guard captain saw the symbol on the carriage, his expression changed, and he immediately shouted, "Quickly get off the carriage. Take the carriage away and don't block the way here." No matter how good Lung Hua's temperament was, He couldn't help but become angry at this moment. Just as he was about to get angry, Dufan's laughing voice sounded from the front. I was wondering what was going on. So, it's because of this that you're not allowed to enter the city in a carriage? Isn't this too discriminatory? Dufan walked forward and lightly fanned his chest with the fan in his hand. Perhaps it was because she heard his casual and laughing voice. But the woman who was originally lying listlessly on the soft couch in the luxurious carriage immediately sat up. She stretched out her hand to lift the curtain and look forward, wanting to see who exactly was speaking. However, her line of sight was blocked by the carriage in front of her. She couldn't see what the person who spoke looked like, but she was surprised to see Wei Feng and Luo Yu sitting in the carriage to the side. The two of them had temperaments that were different from ordinary noble young masters and couldn't help but attract the woman's gaze. Her eyes lit up as she stared at the two of them with a love-struck expression. Young Mississippi, the maidservant who was waiting on the side called out softly while secretly pulling on the corner of the woman's clothes. She looked at the master, who had a dark expression, with some worry. She only felt that the atmosphere in the carriage had suddenly become oppressive, causing her to become somewhat restless. What are you doing? Get lost. The woman angrily swung her hand with such force that the maidservant was flung to the other side of the carriage. Hiss! The maidservant hit her forehead and sucked in a breath of cold air from the pain. She felt something warm slide down her forehead. She touched it with a trembling hand and found that it was bleeding. The maidservant didn't dare to speak. She just shrank to the side and hurriedly covered the wound with a handkerchief. Sit back down. The middle-aged man, sitting in the carriage, shouted angrily. Perhaps it was because of the anger in his voice that the woman had no choice but to withdraw her gaze. She glanced at her father and sat back down unwillingly. Father, why are you yelling at me? I'm just taking a look. I'm not going to take him back. The woman puckered her lips as she spoke, and her gaze was still slightly reluctant to part with the window that she'd opened up a fine slit, and it descended onto Wei Feng and Luo Yu. Chapter 3978. The two of them looked at each other, and their attention was drawn back by the previous words. I'm talking to you. Hurry up and get off the carriage, or turn around and leave, don't. Before the guard could finish his words, he was sent flying by the fan in Dufan's hand. Dufan was fanning himself with the fan in his hand as he slowly walked to the side of the carriage. He looked at the guard captain who had been sent flying by his fan and said, I'm a person who likes to use violence when I can't reason with him. You don't mind, do you? The city guard captain felt his entire body fly out and hit the city wall before bouncing back and falling to the ground. He felt as if all the bones in his body had been broken. The pain caused his entire face to contort, and he was unable to speak for a long time. After a while, he spat out a mouthful of blood and glared at Dufan. He shouted at the surrounding guards. What are you waiting for? Go. The guards were hesitant at first, but when they heard his words, they immediately rushed forward and attacked them with the sharp blades in their hands. In the luxurious carriage, the woman jumped up excitedly. They're fighting. She jumped out of the carriage almost as soon as she heard the fighting outside. She was so fast that even the middle-aged man sitting in the carriage couldn't catch her. Damn it! Yi Fei, come back here. Catch her and bring her back here. The middle-aged man shouted angrily, but he only saw the figure fly out like a butterfly and pounce forward. Dufan waved the fan in his hand, and a sharp airflow came out, sending the city guards who were pouncing forward flying. He lifted his leg and kicked one of the city guards, which happened to press down on the city guard captain who was just about to stand up, causing him to cry out in pain and fall back down. Feeling a gust of wind behind him, the moment Dufan turned around, he pulled the city guard in front of him and attacked backward. He planned to use the sharp blade in the other party's hand to attack the person behind him. However, he did not expect that when he turned around, what he saw was a girl with a red birthmark on her face who was dressed like a butterfly. The woman lost her balance as she dodged the guard behind her and fell towards him. It wasn't that he wanted someone to attack him from behind, but he had already pulled that person and threw out an attack. It was too late to retract the sharp blade that was flying towards the woman. In order to avoid harming innocent people, he immediately shifted his steps and moved to the side. He reached out and grabbed the woman's waist. With a turn of his body, he brought her along and avoided the sharp blade attack. The girl seemed to have been startled, and her clear eyes blinked as she looked at Dufan. Her eyes did not have the same infatuated expression as when she was leaning against the car window to look at Luo Yu and Wei Feng. However, in an instant, she reached out and wrapped her arms around Dufan's neck and pressed her head against his chest like an infatuated fool. "Thank you for saving me, young master. This little girl has no intention of repaying you and is willing to repay you with my body." Her sweet voice was so coquettish that it could drip water, causing Dufan to have goosebumps all over his body. He was originally still staring at the girl's eyes, but he did not expect that the girl would bury her face in his chest in the next moment, making a bashful expression, which really scared him quite a bit. "Miss, the patriarch wants you to go back." A few guards caught up, and their eyes carried a bit of disgust as they watched the girl throw herself into the man's arms. "No," the girl said stubbornly in a loud voice, her hand still wrapped around Dufan's neck. Chapter 3979. Dufan had practically allowed the woman to get close to him. No, it was he who had wrapped his arms around the young lady's waist. However, this young lady was a bit too ugly. Although her figure wasn't bad, the red birthmark on her face had practically covered half of her face. Even if her facial features could be considered to be exquisite, the birthmark had completely destroyed her beauty. Coupled with her gaudy dress, it truly caused others to be unable to help but avoid her. The fan in Dufan's hand tapped the woman's acupuncture point, causing her to let out a low cry as her hand went numb. In the next moment, her entire body was blown away by a force, and her figure fell backwards. When the guard saw this, they took a step back in unison and allowed the woman to fall to the ground. Dufan had a smile on his face as he opened the fan in his hand and lightly swept it over his body as if he wanted to brush off something that had touched him when the woman approached him. At the same time, he spoke in a neutral tone. "Young lady, you must know that this young master was born handsome, confident, and elegant. Countless women have thrown themselves into my arms. If all of them were unable to repay me with their bodies, then this young master's backyard probably wouldn't be able to fit anyone in. Young lady, the patriarch has asked you to go." Only then did the guard step forward and carry the woman towards the carriage. "Presumptuous! Who allowed you to carry me away? Let go! Let go of me!" The woman shouted as she raised her leg to kick them. However, at this moment, she saw her father walk out from the carriage and shout angrily, "Haven't you caused enough trouble?" Luo Yu and Wei Feng looked at the luxurious carriage with spurious smiles on their faces. After they saw the woman being carried onto the carriage, the two of them withdrew their gazes and looked forward. Besides the city guard captain, all the other city guards had fallen to the ground. Thus, they drove the carriage towards the city, and Dufan and Lu Yun led the way to the new residence. Along with their departure, the luxurious carriage behind them followed them into the city. However, after the middle-aged man entered the city, he glanced at the people on the ground and frowned, and then he looked towards the direction the carriages had vanished in before heading into the city. After they entered the city guard captain that had rushed over after hearing the news led a group over. When he saw the injured person, he asked in a low voice, "What happened?" The city guard captain was supported up by two city guards, and he forcefully endured the discomfort in his body as he reported the matter to the city guard captain. In the end, he said, "Guard captain, these people must be dragged out. Otherwise, they might cause some trouble in the city. Moreover, this subordinate doesn't think they're good people." The city guard captain immediately ordered the group behind him when he heard this. "Search for them." "Yes," the city guards replied before swiftly heading into the city. On the other side, Dufan led them to a residence, and then he opened the carriage door to invite Fengjiu and the others to disembark while he said with a smile, "Master, Yama Lord, the environment of this residence can be considered to be good. This area isn't the central area, and it's comparatively quieter. Everything in the residence has been arranged, so you can rest once you enter." Xinyuan Mose and Fengjiu disembarked with the child in their arms, and they sized up the residence before striding in. The people behind them successively disembarked from the carriage and followed them in. The monk walked behind them, and he glanced at the residence before following them in. Chapter 3980. Open the door. Open the door quickly. A group of city guards banged on the door of Fengjiu's residence and shouted. Because a large group of people had gathered early in the morning, the people around all stuck their heads out to see what was going on. Hearing the commotion outside, Du Fan, who had woken up early, said goodbye to Leng Hua, who was preparing breakfast in the residence. Then, he climbed over the back wall and left. Qi Kong was woken up by the commotion and was about to go out to take a look when he saw Leng Hua carrying the cooked porridge to his sister and Bai Qingqing. Seeing him, Qi Kong smiled and said, "Why are you up so early? You even cooked porridge?" "I'm used to waking up early, so I can't sleep." Leng Hua smiled and said, "I'm bringing the cooked porridge to my sister and the others." "All right, don't worry about the commotion outside. Du Fan went out and will be back soon." Hearing this, Qi Kong nodded and said, "Okay, I know. But if this continues, it will probably wake the master and the others up. I'll go set up a soundproof enchantment in front." As he spoke, he walked forward. Seeing this, Leng Hua called out, "Breakfast is in the kitchen. If you're hungry, go eat first." "Okay, I know." Qi Kong waved his hand and replied without turning around. In a guest room, the monk had woken up early to chant sutras. Hearing the commotion outside, he only paused for a moment, then closed his eyes and continued chanting. After some time, the commotion outside disappeared. About 7 o'clock in the morning, the monk got up and walked out. He saw Du Fan, Qi Kong, and the others sitting at the table and chatting. "Master, you're here. Sit." Du Fan smiled and invited him to sit down. He poured him a cup of tea and said, "Grandmaster, the place you mentioned could be considered a hidden sect here. When I went out this morning, I asked around. Even in this city, very few people know about that place." Du Fan paused. He looked at the monk and said, "However, I've also speculated during this period. Since they can take the 2 treasures from the myriad Buddhist sect and prevent your people from directly taking them back, I think the strength of this hidden sect must be very strong, right?" He picked up the teacup and took a sip. Then, he put down the teacup and gently turned the teacup with one hand. He said, "I heard from Leng Hua that the great master said that my master would encounter a bloody disaster this time. Last time, even though his opponent was the Azura King, my master only suffered some superficial wounds. I don't think it would be the bloody disaster that the great master spoke of, right? Could it be that this bloody calamity is due to this hidden sect?" "Umitba." The monk murmured and did not say anything more. However, his attitude made Du Fan and the others faintly guess. At this time, Hui Lang came over with a yawn. When he saw them all here, he said, "You all got up very early." As he spoke, he sat down at the side and poured himself a cup of tea. Suddenly, he glanced outside and asked as if he had just realized something. "Huh? I heard someone knocking on the door this morning. Why is there no sound now?" Du Fan smiled and said, "I made a trip to the city governor's estate and obtained a token." As he spoke, he waved his hand and a token appeared in his palm. "How did you get it? You didn't steal it, did you?" Hui Lang asked with his eyes wide open. Chapter 3981. Hearing this, Hui Lang grinned and said, "That's enough. What do you mean the city lord gave it to you? You probably got it by force like last time, right?" "I didn't get it this time." Du Fan looked at Hui Lang and said, "I just asked the city lord one question, and he gave it to me." "What question?" Hui Lang asked curiously. Du Fan smiled and said, "I just asked him if he knew about the Demon King and the Divine King behind the auction house being killed." Hui Lang was stunned and then laughed. I see. Ha 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 ha." They chatted for a while. Seeing that Fan Lin was not here, Hui Lang asked, "Why don't I see Fan Lin? Hasn't he woken up yet?" Qi Kong heard and said, "He has woken up, but he went to Qin Xian's place." They didn't know how the 2 of them got together, but they thought highly of them. After all, the 2 of them were a good match, and they knew each other well. Oh, he went to Qin Xian's place. Huilang nodded and asked, Hey, how are Lung Shuang and Qing's injuries? Are they better? Lung Hua said gently, My sister and the others are much better. They also took some pills this morning. There's nothing else to do here, so I let them heal their internal injuries first. Yes, that's what I should do. Their health is the most important thing, Huilang said and asked about other things. It was close to noon when they saw their master and little masters coming out. Xinyuan Mose and Feng Jiu brought the two children out for a walk. The two little fellows had eaten and slept enough, so they appeared to be very energetic. As soon as they saw the new residents outside, they giggled. When they passed by the garden, they saw butterflies flying and reached out their little hands to catch them. Because it was their first time here and they were still injured, Feng Jiu was not in a hurry to leave. Instead, she stayed with her child for a few days. One morning after a few days, she went to the monk's courtyard. Master, Feng Jiu looked at the monk who was sitting cross-legged in the courtyard, chanting scriptures. He walked in and stopped beside him. Benefactor, you're here. The monk opened his eyes and glanced at her. He got up and invited her to sit at the table at the side. After the two of them sat down at the table, Feng Jiu said, Great master, I'm preparing to leave tomorrow. I came to inform you today because I wanted you to wait here in this house. I'll be back when I'm done. The monk glanced at her and said, Patron, this penniless monk will go with you. Hearing this, Feng Jiu raised his eyebrows. Master, you want to go straight to the door? I believe you know that even if you go straight to the door, you won't be able to do anything to them. They won't hand over those things just because you're here. I know. I just want to do my part. Moreover, I've said that there will be a bloody disaster on this trip. The monk said slowly, his calm gaze falling on Feng Jiu. Feng Jiu pursed his lips and smiled. It doesn't matter if there's a bloody disaster or not. In any case, I have to go on this trip. However, if you follow me, you'll only cause me trouble. Since that's the case, why don't you wait for me here? Chapter 3982. This poor monk is only worried about your safety. I'm not worried that you'll take our sex, Saraira, and heart sutra for yourself. The monk put his palms together with a solemn expression. It was clear that he felt that she was in grave danger. Feng Jiu smiled. Reverend need not worry, I'll be careful. She stood up. I won't disturb Reverend's meditation any longer. I'll come back to see you after I've retrieved the items. Seeing her like this, the monk sighed inwardly. He stood up and put his palms together. Amit Ba. Almsgiver, please be careful. The next morning, when Feng Jiu was about to leave, she summoned Fire Phoenix from the space and had it stay behind to protect the two children. Xinyuan Mose didn't approve of this. You'll be going alone this time. With Huafeng by your side to protect you, I'll be more at ease. As for here, you don't have to worry. I'll take good care of the child. Xinyuan Mose said in a deep voice as he looked at Huafeng, who had stopped at the side, and frowned slightly. Feng Jiu smiled. I still have Tun Yun and the others in the space. It's enough to have them by my side. As for Fire Phoenix, I'm really worried when I'm not by the children's side. I'll be more at ease if it stays behind. You don't believe that I'll be able to protect them? Xinyuan Mose asked. Feng Jiu saw that his expression had darkened and hurriedly said, Of course not. With your current cultivation, even I'm no match for you. I naturally believe that you'll be able to protect the children. However, there's always a what if. There are many things that can't be said for certain. So after thinking about it, I'll be more at ease if Fire Phoenix stays behind. She looked at Xinyuan Mose. You also want me to be at ease with the family, right? Besides, Tun Yun and Old White aren't weak. It's enough to have them by my side. Xinyuan Mose didn't say anything else. Since that's the case, we'll do as you say. However, you have to be careful when you're alone outside. Pay attention to your safety. Yes, I know. Feng Jiu smiled. Her beautiful eyes narrowed into crescents. Fire Phoenix listened to their discussion and looked at the two babies on the bed. She couldn't help but fly over and rub her head against their necks. Fire Phoenix, I'm leaving. Remember what I told you. After Feng Jiu kissed Xinyuan Mose goodbye, he turned to Fire Phoenix, who had stopped by the bed to look after the child. Yes, master, don't worry. I will definitely protect Little Master. Hearing this, Fengjiu pursed his lips and smiled, saying, you can also go into their jade pendants. Ordinary people won't be able to find you. After she instructed Hua Feng, she told Xinyuan Mose about the children for a while. Then, she called Du Fan and the others to the courtyard to give them some instructions. Master, why don't you let me go with you? Du Fan said as his gaze fell on her. They were all worried about the bloody disaster that the monk had mentioned, so after discussing it in secret, they finally decided to let one of them go with her. If anything happened, they could take care of each other. Chapter 39-83. Hearing her words, they didn't say anything more. They just told her to be careful and watch her leave. After she left, Huilang couldn't help but look at Leng Hua and Qi Kong. He asked, are we just going to let Madame go alone? Will there be any problems? Should we follow her secretly? Since Master said no, then there's no need to. As Du Fan spoke, he looked at his master who had already disappeared from his sight. He turned to them and said, Master is going out alone. With her ability, it will not be easy for others to detect her. It will be relatively safer. However, there will definitely be many people keeping an eye on the Little Masters. We will guard here and protect the Little Masters so that Master won't be worried when she goes out. Hearing this, everyone looked at each other, nodded their heads, and walked in. After they left, Monk walked out from a corner with Buddhist prayer beads in his hand. He paused for a moment, then turned and walked toward the backyard. After leaving the city, Fengjiu headed towards the north. She didn't walk, but used the flying device instead. As soon as she left, she was already thinking about her children at home. Because she missed them, she wanted to settle this matter as soon as possible. The place that Monk told her about was a hidden sect. It was said that it was about 2 to 3 days' journey from the city. Even if she traveled on the flying device, it would still take her 2 to 3 days to arrive. Moreover, the route was unclear, so delays were inevitable. The main thing was that she had to use another identity to sneak into the hidden sect. This was the more difficult part. The first day she traveled on the flying device was very peaceful. Nothing happened. At night, she didn't sleep in the mountains, but went straight into the space to rest. Compared to the cold wind outside, the space was warm and full of spiritual power. It was very comfortable. She came to the side of the spiritual spring and looked at the golden lotus in the water that was shining brightly. She couldn't help but smile. She believed that it wouldn't be long before Mo Chun cultivated an immortal body and reappeared in front of the world. The contracted beasts in the space all gathered around her, happily rubbing against her. She patted their heads and said, I'm going to rest first. You guys cultivate more inside. Don't be lazy. Master, I'm already very strong now. As Lao Bai spoke, he would sometimes take the form of a horse, and sometimes he would take the form of a white dragon. Just as he had said, although his current strength was not as strong as Tanyun, he was still very strong. Fengjiu smiled and glanced at Senior White before he said, You can't even compare to the 2 cloud-devouring beasts in the space, yet you still have the nerve to say that you're strong? Senior White instantly became listless when it heard this. It was a fact that it couldn't compare to the cloud-devouring beast, but hadn't expected that even the female cloud-devouring beast couldn't compare to it, so it couldn't raise its head. The mother beast had been cultivating ever since it entered this place, and it was still in the process of cultivating. Given how hard it was working, it was only natural that it couldn't compare. In Fengjiu's space, the white tiger had grown from a small pet to a majestic adult tiger. It listened to Fengjiu and Lao Bai's conversation while lying at Fengjiu's feet, occasionally looking up at her. All right, let's disperse. Fengjiu gestured for them not to disturb her and went to rest. Chapter 39-84. The next morning, after Fengjiu came out of the space, she continued on her journey alone. Because she was walking on a remote mountain path, she didn't encounter many people along the way. However, she didn't expect that at noon, when she was resting on a tree and eating a spirit fruit, she would see several blue-robed cultivators flying north on their swords. Seeing this, her eyes flashed, and she immediately ate the spirit fruit before quietly following behind them. She didn't follow too closely, but also didn't stay too far away. As she followed, she paid attention to the words and actions of those people, especially one of them who was relatively thin. When the blue-robed cultivators saw that the noon sun was quite strong, one of them said, "How about we rest for a while? Let's stop and drink some water. The noon sun is too hot. We're sweating from flying under the scorching sun." Another older cultivator saw this and said, "That's fine. Then let's rest under the tree in front." When the other cultivators heard this, they looked at each other and revealed a trace of joy. They immediately sped up and went to a shady place to rest. Sitting under the tree, they each took out their water pouches to drink. One of them only drank a few before emptying his water pouch. When he saw that there was no more water, he couldn't help but look around. Then he looked at the older cultivator and asked, "Senior Marshal Brother Lin, is there a water source nearby?" "There isn't here. We'll have to walk a bit further to find a water source." The older cultivator glanced at the empty water pouch and said, "How about you use mine?" Although he asked this, he had no intention of handing it over. When the man saw this, he revealed a smile and said, "No need, no need. How could I use Senior Marshal Brother's water? I remember that Junior Marshal Brother Ruan's water pouch was filled with water last night. I think there should still be a lot of water left. Right, Junior Marshal Brother Ruan?" He looked at the thin man who sat to the side and didn't say anything. He stared at him with a fake smile. When he saw that the other party was staring at him, or more accurately, at the water pouch in his hand, the man surnamed Ruan closed his eyes. He pursed his lips and paused for a moment before handing over the water pouch in his hand. The others were not surprised by this scene. Obviously, this was not the first time this had happened. The man took the water sack and poured all the water into his own water sack. Then, he threw the empty water sack back to him and said with a smile, "Junior Brother Ruan, you don't have much water left, so I poured it all out. You don't mind, do you?" "No, I'm not thirsty anymore," the man said with a timid tone. "That's good." The man smiled with satisfaction. The group sat for a while, rested for a while, and then continued to fly on their swords. In the dark, Fengjiu watched them leave and walked out from behind a tree. His figure flashed, and he quietly followed behind them. She did not continue on her journey. Instead, she chose to follow them under the cover of the trees on the mountain path. This way, it would be less likely for her to be exposed. As for those people, she guessed that they should be from that hidden sect. Right now, she was waiting for an opportunity. Chapter 3985. Although these people looked like they were from the same sect, there was not much sincerity between them. Although she had not come into contact with that hidden sect, looking at these people, she could vaguely understand why the people from that hidden sect would use people to achieve their goals. Thinking about it, this should be a sect that would do anything to achieve their goals. Moreover, the competition within the sect should be very fierce. Looking at how these people interacted with each other, it was obvious that it was natural for them to praise the strong and trample on the weak. These people didn't look for wild animals to eat. Instead, they took fasting pills and leaned against the fire to sleep. However, as the night gradually deepened, when the cultivators were deep asleep, the man surnamed Ruan stood up. When he moved, the older cultivator vigilantly opened his eyes. When he saw that it was him, he asked, "Junior Ruan, what are you doing so late at night?" The man glanced at him and lowered his voice as if he was afraid of waking up the others. He said apologetically, "I'm sorry, Senior Lin. I wanted to relieve myself. I didn't expect to wake you up." Hearing this, the older cultivator said, "Go." With that, he closed his eyes and continued to rest. The man nodded and glanced at him before walking away. Fengjiu, who was hiding in the shadows, heard the man go to relieve himself. Originally, she didn't plan on following him. However, when the man turned around, his gaze swept past the other cultivator. A trace of viciousness flashed through his eyes. She couldn't help but raise her eyebrows and quietly follow him. Along the way, this person had always given off a cowardly and weak feeling. Among the few cultivators, he was the weakest, so it was normal for him to be bullied and suppressed. However, what surprised her was that this seemingly cowardly person actually had such a sinister expression. When she quietly followed behind him, she saw the man take out a short flute and put it to his mouth. His fingers moved slightly, his mouth moved, and his breath moved, but no sound came from the flute. Just as she was slightly surprised, she heard something scuttling through the grass. A small black and yellow snake the size of a chopstick scuttled out from the grass. It coiled around a withered branch on the ground and looked at the man playing the flute. After a while, the man stretched out his hand to support the small snake and revealed a strange smile. He put away the flute and walked back to the older cultivator's side to rest with his eyes closed. The night was quiet, with only the occasional crackling of the burning branches and the rustling of the leaves in the night wind. After midnight, it was even quieter, and the few of them slept soundly. Feng Jiu had been watching in the dark until she saw the chopstick-sized snake quietly crawl forward and arrive beside the cultivator who had been ordering the man, surnamed, run around. Suddenly, the small snake leaped up and opened its mouth to bite the man's neck. The man was awakened from his sleep and let out a miserable shriek. He instinctively reached for his neck and grabbed the slippery snake. However, the snake's mouth was wide open and tightly bit his neck. No matter how he pulled, he couldn't pull it away. Senior Marshal Brother Lin, save me, save me. Chapter 3986. The cultivators who had been startled awake by the miserable shriek immediately jumped away and stared at the scene in horror. They watched as the bloody little snake crawled into his neck and entered his body through his neck. Meanwhile, his face gradually turned from pale to a dark purple color. The blood that originally seeped out changed color, and the color of his lips gradually turned dark purple. His eyes were wide open in fear, and one of his hands was still tightly clenched into a fist and pressed against his neck. In the next moment, his body suddenly twitched, and poisonous blood seeped out of his 7 orifices. His entire body stiffened and fell down. After twitching a few times, he stopped breathing. This scene happened right before their eyes. Moreover, it happened so quickly that none of them were able to react. They only saw that he had already stopped breathing. The cultivators sucked in a breath of cold air. None of them stepped forward and only watched on with caution. After a while, they saw the small snake crawl out of the dead cultivator's heart. Their faces couldn't help but turn pale. Whoosh! The older cultivator raised his sword, and a ray of sword chi cut the poisonous snake in two just as it was about to escape. Seeing the 2 halves of the snake twitching on the ground, they felt a chill run down their spines. The chopstick-sized snake burrowed into the man's body. After a while, it burrowed out and its body grew larger. Why did it grow so large in an instant? Everyone knew that it grew because it ate the dead disciples' organs. In the shadows, Feng Jiu watched this scene and frowned. A trace of seriousness flashed across his face. He didn't think that an unremarkable disciple would have such ability. It was truly shocking. Her gaze couldn't help but fall on the man who was backing away in fear. She didn't think that this person would be so good at acting. If she hadn't seen it with her own eyes, she wouldn't have believed that this was his doing. Senior Brother Lin, what kind of snake is that? Why is it so terrifying? A cultivator asked with a trembling voice. Just a moment ago, the person beside them was still alive. But now, he had died in such a terrifying manner. It truly shocked them. The older cultivator's expression was grave. He looked at the 2 halves of the snake and said, "I've never seen this kind of snake before. However, from this, it seems that this snake is extremely poisonous and very bloodthirsty." His face darkened slightly, and he paused for a moment before continuing, "This poisonous snake has appeared in our sect's territory, so it's probably not a good thing. When we return, we have to quickly report this matter to our superiors, so that the disciples who are guarding the gate can be careful." Hearing his words, the few of them nodded. After cleaning up, they sprinkled some medicinal powder around the area to prevent any more poisonous snakes from appearing. As for the dead cultivator, they only glanced at him with pity before dealing with his corpse. Perhaps it was because something like this happened in the middle of the night, they didn't go back to sleep. They just sat by the fire and thought about their own things. In the shadows, Fengjiu's gaze fell on the man, surnamed Ruan. She stared at him, and no one knew what she was thinking. The next morning, the few of them continued to move forward while Fengjiu continued to follow behind them. Perhaps it was because they were gradually entering the area of the hidden sect. She felt that there were many traps in the surroundings every time they walked a distance. Chapter 39:87. The few people who were resting raised their heads to look. When their gazes fell upon the woman's beautiful face, their eyes lit up and their faces were filled with surprise and admiration. It's Junior Marshall's sister Zhu. The older cultivator stared at the woman on the flying sword with a burning gaze. His gaze slowly moved down her beautiful face and landed on her exquisite curves. Fengjiu, who was hidden in the shadows, looked at the woman and saw that she was wearing a white tube top dress with a tight belt around her waist. It accentuated her slim waist and made her figure appear even more exquisite and alluring. Because it was a tube top dress, even though it was covered with a thin veil, one could still faintly see her jade arms and snow-white breasts. Her gaze moved up and landed on the woman's face. Her face couldn't be considered peerless, but it had a charm of its own. Just by looking at the sparkling eyes of the man, it was clear that this woman's charm was not small. Ling Er greets Senior Marshall brothers. The woman landed on the ground on her sword. When she arrived in front of them, she bent her waist slightly and bowed to them. She called out Senior Brother in a soft and tender voice. The men's hearts softened when they heard that. Their eyes stared straight at the spring scenery that entered their eyes when she bent her body slightly. Junior Marshall's sister Ling Er, there's no need to be so courteous. The older cultivator took a large step forward and extended his hand to help her up. However, he was reluctant to withdraw his hand. The woman shyly withdrew her hand and said, "Master knows that Senior Marshall brothers are already on the way back and specially ordered Ling Er to come greet you." When they heard this, they looked at each other in surprise. At this moment, the woman seemed to be curious and asked, "Senior Marshall brother Lin, did you manage to gain anything from your trip?" "Of course we did," the older man replied with a smile. "It was precisely because we gained something that we wanted to rush back to report to Master. We didn't expect to meet Junior Marshall's sister here." From Senior Marshall brother's words, could it be that Fengjiu is really in our area? The woman covered her red lips in surprise. "That's right." He nodded but didn't say anything else. Seeing this, the woman gently tugged on his sleeve, and her soft voice carried a hint of coquettishness. "Senior brother, Ling Er is very curious about that ghost Dr. Fengjiu. Why don't you tell Ling Er about it?" Junior Marshall's sister Ling Er, it's not that Senior Marshall brother doesn't want to tell you, but I have to report this to Master first. Although the older man was greedy for her beauty, he didn't lose his head. Hearing this, the woman's eyes flashed, and she said apologetically, "Ling Er forgot the rules. Senior brother, please don't take offense." They chatted for a while before flying off on their flying swords. Fengjiu followed behind them. Around dusk, the people who were flying on their flying swords took out a pill from the space and swallowed it. Then they walked into a fog. Fengjiu, who was behind him, glanced at him and followed him. With her body, even if the fog was poisonous, it wouldn't harm her in the slightest. However, what surprised her was that not only was there poisonous fog, there was also a formation in the fog. If she wanted to pass through here, she would have to pass through this formation. The fog in front of her blocked her line of sight, and she couldn't see the figures of those people. She gathered her thoughts and decided to pass through the fog first. However, after walking for a while in the array, she heard a burst of teasing. Chapter 39:88. She dodged behind a tree in the middle of the formation and saw the woman, surnamed Zhu, and a man hugging each other. Hearing the man's voice, it seemed to be one of the cultivators. "Senior brother, wait." The woman pushed the man away and pulled his half-open clothes with both hands. She said, "Senior brother, what news did you get this time?" With the woman in his arms, the man panted slightly. He wanted to pounce on her and kiss her, but was pushed away. He had to ask, "What do you want to know?" The woman smiled and whispered in his ear, "Ghost Dr. Fungio and the others, as well as the ancient Golden Lotus and the Million Buddhist sect. In fact, this news is not a secret to the people outside. Only we in the sect don't know about it." As the man spoke, he held the woman's waist and said, "Ghost Dr. Fungio and the Azure Dragon's sovereign are here, as well as their twins. According to the latest news, Lord Azura and another divine king met and fought with them, but they died tragically in their hands. This news is spread everywhere, but their whereabouts are unknown. As for the ancient Golden Lotus, it is said that it has fallen into their hands. The Million Buddhist sect has not done anything, so I don't know what they mean." Hearing this, the woman's eyes flickered slightly. "You don't know where they are?" "No, I won't lie to you about this." The man continued, "After they killed the Azura king and the others, they disappeared without a trace, and no one dared to follow them. Furthermore, we didn't go out for long this time, so we hurried back to report to Master after hearing the news." As his voice fell, the man said again, "Junior sister, can you listen to me now?" As he spoke, he lowered his head and leaned forward. The woman smiled and let the man take advantage of her for a while. Then she pushed him away and said, "Senior brother, don't worry. We are about to return to the sect. When we arrive, I will find you. It's not good to be here now. Senior brother Lin will come to find us when he sees that we are missing, lest they find us." The man was a little unhappy, but when he heard that she would come to him after returning to the sect, his eyes suddenly lit up. "You will really come to me after returning to the sect?" "Of course." The woman smiled and tapped his chest. She stood on her tiptoes and kissed him. Then she adjusted her clothes and said, "I'll go back first. You can come back later." "Okay," the man answered with satisfaction. After watching her leave, he walked back after a while. Feng Jiu, who was hiding in the shadows, raised his eyebrows and walked out. He felt that the people of this hidden sect were not to be trifled with. She slowly walked forward and circled around the array. When she was about to exit the array, she saw that those people were resting not far away. Seeing this, she returned to the array. Because they were resting in the mountains, the sky gradually darkened. The cultivators ordered the man, surnamed Ruan, to pick up some branches. Feng Jiu, who was inside the array, saw the man walk away. Her eyes flashed, and she immediately left from the other side and quietly followed the man. At this moment, the man surnamed Ruan had walked quite a distance and turned back to look at the people resting. A trace of ruthlessness flashed through his eyes. He picked up some branches in the mountains and walked back. This caused Feng Jiu, who was about to attack, to miss the opportunity and could only wait. Chapter 3989. The man ordered as if it was a matter of course. He threw his empty water bag to him and said to the people beside him, "You guys should be almost out of water, right? Although we said that we can return to the sect tomorrow, it's still better to prepare some water so that we can drink at night when we're thirsty." Yes, I'm also out," another person said and handed his water bag to the man. He smiled and said, "We'll have to trouble you, Junior Juan. This area is our territory. Just walk straight in that direction and you'll see the water source." The older cultivator said and handed his water bag over. After receiving their water bags, the man stood up and said, "Then I'll be right back." As he said that, he carried the water bags and walked towards the water source. The water source was slightly further away from where they were resting. When he reached the water source and bent down to fill it with water, the reflection of a figure in the water shocked him. When he instinctively turned around, what greeted him was a heavy blow and he fainted. Feng Jiu caught the person who fell. She wasn't afraid that he would make a sound when he fell to the ground. Instead, she tightly grabbed his neck and broke it with a crack, causing him to lose all signs of life in an instant. A trace of blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. It was blown away by the breeze and faintly filled the air, Although the cultivators were resting at a place far from here, when the trace of blood spread with the breeze, the older cultivator sitting by the fire and the woman surnamed Zhu immediately smelled it. The two of them instantly became alert. They suddenly stood up and swept their sharp gazes around. "What's wrong?" The others didn't understand and asked. "There's the smell of blood," the older cultivator said, and his hand was already on the sword at his waist. He stared at a certain place and said, "I'll go take a look." Just as he was about to take a step towards the water source, he saw a figure walking over there. He seemed to be carrying something in his hand. As he walked closer, the smell of blood became heavier. "It's Junior Yuan," the other man said. When he saw the rabbit that was stabbed to death in his hand, he couldn't help but laugh. He even brought back a rabbit. Feng Jiu walked closer. At this time, she had changed into the man's clothes and had also changed her appearance. She didn't have any of her previous aura and demeanor. Instead, she looked exactly like the man who was ordered around. "Senior Lin, what's wrong?" Feng Jiu walked closer and looked at the older man. "Did anything happen over there?" The older man asked, his gaze fixed on Feng Jiu. Feng Jiu shook her head and paused. "When I went to fill the water source, I saw a rabbit, so I caught it." "Did something happen?" "Nothing, I just smelled blood in the air," the older man said, and his gaze fell on the dead rabbit, asking, "Why did you catch a rabbit and bring it back?" Feng Jiu bashfully smiled and seemed a bit embarrassed. "In the morning, I heard Senior Liang say that he wanted to eat roasted rabbit and saw this gray rabbit in the bushes, so I caught it and brought it back." Hearing this, the cultivator, surnamed Liang, smiled and nodded. "I didn't expect you to remember. You're quite considerate." Chapter 3990. Feng Jiu responded and took the rabbit to a nearby place to clean it. After cleaning it, he roasted it over the fire. Seeing his skillful movements, one of them smiled and said, "We didn't know Junior Yuan had such skills." Hearing this, Feng Jiu's heart skipped a beat. However, he didn't show it on his face and said, "I know a little. I'm not good at it, so it won't taste good. I hope Senior Marshall brothers don't dislike it." Their attention wasn't on Feng Jiu. Instead, they surrounded the woman, surnamed Zhu, and talked to her. Feng Jiu followed her observation and acted like the man, surnamed Yuan. He tried his best not to reveal any flaws. That night, they rested, and she rested as well. Everything passed peacefully until the next morning. Everyone woke up early and continued to walk forward. Around 7 in the morning, they walked up the mountain stairs and arrived in front of the gate of the hidden sect. Feng Jiu only took a quick glance before following them into the sect. After entering, the woman surnamed Zhu bid farewell to the few of them before leaving. The older man said to the few of them, "Come with me to report to Master." "Yes." The few of them replied and followed behind him. In order to prevent others from discovering that she was an imposter, she didn't look around as she walked. She only listened more and spoke less. This was in line with the man's words and actions. The few people didn't find it strange and continued to talk about their own things. No one paid attention to her. When they arrived at the waist of a mountain, they followed the older cultivator into a courtyard and respectfully bowed to the tightly shut door. "Disciple greets Master." The older man bowed and raised his head to look at the tightly shut door and said, "Disciple didn't disappoint. I've completed the task Master gave me. Come in." An old voice came from the tightly shut door. Then the tightly shut door opened with a creak, as if it was pulled open by someone from the inside. The older man happily stepped forward and walked in. Then the door closed. No one knew what they were doing inside. After about the time it took for a stick of incense to burn, the door opened again. This time, the older man walked out with a happy expression. After looking at the few people, he gave them the pills in his hand. "These are for Master. He wants you to go back and cultivate well. Strive to break through again," the older man said as his gaze swept across the pills in their hands. "Go back and have a good rest." The old voice came from the door again. After hearing his voice, the people in the courtyard responded and turned to leave. Feng Jiu held the pill in her hand and looked at it, her eyes flashing slightly. Suddenly, from the corner of her eyes, she saw a figure come up to her and reach out to pat her on the shoulder. Junior brother Juan, we live in the same courtyard. Let's go back together. As he spoke, his eyes were fixed on the pill in Feng Jio's hand. Hearing this, Feng Jio smiled and looked at him with surprise. Senior Juan wants to go back with me? Let's go, let's go. The cultivator said and pulled her away. At the same time, he said to the people behind him, we'll go back first. Chapter 39:91. Seeing the three of them leave one after another, the few people who were still standing at the same spot couldn't help but look at each other. They all knew in their hearts that the boy with the surname Juan would not be able to keep the pill. They just didn't know whose hands it would end up in. Because this was their master's courtyard, the three of them didn't speak here. Instead, they walked out of the courtyard in the direction of their residence. After going out for a while, they came back with a medicinal pill that could increase their strength. Right now, they only wanted to go back and quickly consume the medicinal pill to cultivate and strive to increase their strength again, so as to prevent any accidents from happening. Feng Jio was originally still wondering where the man with the surname Juan lived. She didn't expect that this person would covet the pill in her hand, which saved her a lot of trouble. She followed the man and didn't say much because she knew that there was someone following behind her. She just didn't know if the man with the surname Lin also had his eyes on the pill in her hand. When they arrived at a courtyard, the man walking beside Feng Jio smiled and said, Junior brother Juan, you see that you're still some distance away from advancing. Even if you consume this pill, it'll be a waste. How about I give you something else in exchange? This. Feng Jio hesitated. Her face revealed a conflicted expression as if she was reluctant to part with the pill, but also seemed like she didn't dare to refuse. Seeing Feng Jio's hesitant expression as if she was reluctant to part with the pill, his face immediately darkened. He looked at her and said, What? Don't tell me you still want to refuse? Don't forget, if it were someone else, they would directly snatch your pill. They wouldn't be as easy to talk to as I am. No. I'm just up. Before she could finish speaking, the man with the surname Lin who had been following behind walked out and interrupted her. Junior brother Juan, why don't you exchange with me? The man with the surname Lin walked out and looked at Feng Jio. He said, The pill in your hand is a high-grade pill. How about I give you 3 middle-grade pills? In addition, I can also promise you that no one will dare to bully you here in the future. Seeing the man surnamed Lin, the man couldn't help but panic. He quickly lowered his head and bowed. Greetings, Senior Brother Lin. A trace of resentment and unwillingness flashed through his eyes. The medicinal pill was right in front of his eyes, yet he had interfered. It was really hateful. However, the other party's strength was stronger than his. In front of him, he could only endure. Junior Juan, what do you think? He looked at Feng Jio and asked. Feng Jio looked at him and thought for a moment before saying, Junior Brother Lin's suggestion is naturally excellent. As she spoke, she took out the pill she had obtained earlier and handed it over with both hands. In fact, he really wanted to laugh in his heart. It was just a pill, and the people here were actually fighting over it like this. However, it was obvious that the competition based on strength was extremely great. The man surnamed Lin smiled with satisfaction. He took out a bottle and handed it over. At the same time, he put away the medicinal pills and said, These 3 medicinal pills are perfect for junior apprentice brothers cultivation. In the future, if anyone makes things difficult for junior apprentice brother can come find me in the first monastery. Yes, many thanks, Senior Brother Lin. Feng Jio said gratefully and bowed towards him. After watching him leave, she looked at the gloomy man beside her. Just as she was about to say something, she heard his strange voice. Chapter 39:92. His gaze was somewhat sinister as he said, Senior Brother Lin is our master's strongest disciple. With him protecting you, you will be able to do whatever you want in the future. Feng Jio smiled in her heart when she heard that. However, on the surface, there was some uneasiness. She looked at the man and said, Senior, you misunderstood. Actually, I want to give these pills to you. Hearing her words, the man's pupils shrank. As if in disbelief, he asked, What did you say? Senior brother, The 3 pills that senior brother Lin gave me. I want to gift them to you. Fengjiu smiled embarrassedly and said, I live in this courtyard with senior brother and have always been under senior brother's care. Senior brother also knows that I don't have anything good. Although these 3 pills can't be compared to the ones that master gave me, they are still middle-grade pills. If senior brother doesn't mind, please accept them. Perhaps because he didn't expect Fengjiu to actually give the pills to him, he didn't even have time to retract the sinister expression on his face as he stared at her in shock. Are you serious? Yes. She handed the pills over with both hands and said with a smile, Please take care of me in the future, senior brother. Hearing these words, the sinister expression in the man's eyes finally dissipated, and his gaze towards Fengjiu was no longer as cold as before. After keeping the pills, he revealed a smile and said, All right, we are all fellow disciples of the same courtyard. Since you know how to conduct yourself, I will also know what's good for me. Although my strength can't be compared to senior brother Lin's, it's not bad either. If anything happens to you in the future, I will naturally take care of you. Thank you, senior brother. Fengjiu smiled and cupped her hands in greeting. She thought to herself, a few unpresentable pills were enough to settle this fellow disciple's murderous intentions. She was quite happy to clear her mind. The man happily walked to the room on the left. Seeing this, Fengjiu glanced at the courtyard before walking to the room on the right. There were 2 people living in the courtyard. Other than the private room, the courtyard was shared by the 2 of them. After entering the room, she took a look around the room. There was nothing special about the simple furnishings, but she was satisfied that the room was big enough. She cleaned up the room and replaced all the things on the bed. After she was done, she closed the door and sat on the bed. She put down the bed curtains and took out the things that belonged to the man, surnamed Juan, from the space to check if there was anything that was useful. When her gaze fell on the piccolo, she couldn't help but recall the scene of this person using the piccolo to control the poisonous snake to bite that cultivator to death. When she thought about it again, she felt that there wasn't a single person here who was a good person. Even the weak who had been bullied and humiliated could not help but harbor vicious thoughts of revenge. However, that person was already dead. Even his corpse had been turned into a puddle of blood by the corpse dissolving water. The piccolo was of no use. She placed the piccolo to the side and rummaged through the other things. At that moment, she heard footsteps coming from the courtyard. With a wave of her sleeve, she put away the things on the bed and lay down with her clothes on. She covered herself with a blanket and went to sleep. Junior brother Juan. Junior brother Juan. We heard you returned, so we came to see you. Chapter 3993. On the bed, Fengjiu frowned, a cold glint flashing through her eyes. When she saw them enter the inner room, she hurriedly got up from the bed and looked at them with a frightened expression. Oh, Junior Juan is sleeping. The man in the lead looked at Fengjiu and sized her up. He smiled and said, Junior Juan, I heard that Master gave each of you a pill as a reward. Fengjiu looked at them, paused, and said, Yes, but the pill is no longer with me. Ha ha ha, Junior Juan, who are you trying to fool? We came here as soon as we heard the news. Who could be faster than us? The man clearly didn't believe her. His gaze shifted to the space ring on her hand and said, Why don't you take out the item in your space ring for us to see? Hearing this, a cold glint flashed through Fengjiu's eyes. She looked at them worriedly and said, Senior brothers, you should leave quickly. Senior brother Lin and senior brother, he both said that whoever makes trouble for me will be making trouble for them. If they find out, I'm afraid. Are you joking? Senior brother Lin and senior brother, he will stand up for you? They clearly didn't believe her. Seeing that Fengjiu wasn't willing to take out the pill, their faces turned cold and they said, Are you going to obediently take it out yourself? Or do you want us to make a move? If we make a move, you won't have a good time. Don't mess around. Senior brother, he should be cultivating right now. It won't be good if you disturb him, she said with a panicked expression as she retreated to a corner. We're not looking for him. We're only looking for you. A cold smile appeared on their lips. One of them shot forward and reached out to grab Fengjiu. Fengjiu didn't plan to do it herself. She tried her best to play the role of a coward. When she saw the other party reach out to grab her, she immediately bent down and dashed forward. At the same time, she avoided them and quickly ran to the door. She turned back to look at them and saw that they were standing there in a daze. She immediately ran out and ran towards a room where the man surnamed he was. Senior brother he, save me. Those few people came back to their senses and immediately shouted angrily, chase after him, capture him, and bring him back. Several people quickly rushed out, wanting to capture Fengjiu. In the left courtyard, the man with the surname, he was taking a bath in his room and humming a tune comfortably. He had heard the commotion over there, but he was too lazy to pay attention to it. After all, he had missed out on a high-grade medicinal pill. Even if he had 3 middle-grade medicinal pills in his hands, he was still somewhat unhappy. He had originally wanted to let those people teach that brat a lesson, but who would have thought that the door would be slammed open with a bang? The entire door collapsed with a rumble, exposing the man surnamed He, who had been bathing behind the door, to everyone's eyes. The scene became strange for a moment. The people inside and outside the room froze in place and stared at each other with wide eyes. They saw that the door had been knocked open by a cultivator who was chasing after Fengjiu. He originally wanted to pounce forward and hug Fengjiu, but who would have thought that he would knock open the door? Moreover, the man surnamed, he was still taking a bath in the room behind the door. Looking at the scene of her sitting naked in the water, even the few men couldn't help but be a little dumbfounded. Chapter 3994. When Fengjiu saw this, the corner of her mouth twitched, and she said, Senior Marshal Brother He, I told them not to disturb you, but I didn't think that hearing this, the men quickly came back to their senses. One of them said, Senior Marshal Brother He, no, it's not yours. Don't misunderstand, we're. Before he could finish, the man sitting in the bathtub angrily slapped the water, causing countless splashes. In the next moment, the splashes all turned into sharp ice blades, shooting towards the people outside the door with a whoosh. You guys are courting death. The gloomy voice was filled with anger, and no one bothered to explain. They just quickly retreated to avoid the ice blade. However, they didn't expect that after they avoided the ice blade, the person sitting in the bathtub flew out with a towel wrapped around his lower body. The spirit power in his hands surged, and the water in the bathtub instantly turned into an angry dragon that attacked those people. Whoosh! Bang! Hiss! The sharp sound of air flowing through the air could be heard as the air fiercely collided with the man in the lead. Under the heavy impact, a loud bang could be heard. Immediately after, the male cultivator who was hit let out a blood-curdling scream and was sent flying. He heavily crashed into the courtyard. Pooh! He spat out a mouthful of blood, and his face became pale. He struggled to stand up, but he was powerless. Aside from a man in the lead who was sent flying, the others were injured by the ice blades. For a moment, the smell of blood quietly spread through the courtyard. The man surnamed, he put on his outer robe and walked out. He gloomily looked at the people on the ground. His gaze fell on the man who spat out blood, and he said, Liang Qing, I'm warning you. In the future, don't take half a step into my courtyard. Otherwise, I'll take care of you every time I see you. The man on the ground coughed twice and wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. He was helped up by the people beside him. He looked at the man surnamed He and clenched his teeth. I crossed the line today. I, Liang Qing, will apologize to Senior Marshal Brother He. Thank you for being lenient. With that, he gloomily looked at Fengjiu and stared at her like a venomous snake. Fengjiu was standing next to the door. When the ice blades flew out, she also dodged. As a result, the other party was heavily injured while she didn't have a single drop of blood on her body. The people supported each other as they left. Before they left, they glanced at Fengjiu as if to say, let's wait and see. Seeing the people leave, Fengjiu felt the atmosphere become oppressive. Moreover, there was a faint anger. She immediately apologetically and lowered her head. Senior Marshal Brother He, it's all my fault. If it wasn't for me, I wouldn't have implicated you. The man surnamed He, who was about to throw a tantrum, saw that she admitted her mistake first. His gloomy expression relaxed, and he took a deep breath. This has nothing to do with you. If we don't teach them a lesson, they will come back sooner or later. However, from the looks of it, they won't dare to come again. With that, he paused and looked at Fengjiu. Go back and rest. Yes, thank you, Senior Marshal Brother He. She hurriedly bowed and looked at the broken door. She asked, do we need to find someone to fix it? Chapter 3995. Yes, Fengjiu responded and turned to leave without saying anything else, heading back to her room. The moment she closed the door, the corners of her lips curled up and a smile appeared on her face. She went to the table and poured herself a cup of water. She thought to herself, how can I find out about the Saraira and the Heart Sutra? I reckon that even the average disciple doesn't know about these things. If I want to get my hands on them, I can only start from those supremacies. However, her current identity was a little awkward. This identity was not conspicuous, and she was not outstanding in any aspect. Among so many disciples, it could be said that she was the one who was neglected. She did not even have the opportunity to get close to those so-called masters. In the end, what should she do to achieve her goal? When she thought of her son and daughter at home, she was anxious to return home. Therefore, she did not wish to waste too much time here. If she could end this quickly, she could finish her business and leave earlier. She planned to find an opportunity to ask around before making a decision. The next morning, when Fengjiu walked out of her room, she glanced at the room opposite her. She saw that the door had been fixed, and there was no movement in the room of the man with the surname He. She retracted her gaze and walked out. Along the way, she saw a few cultivators who went back to their own rooms. They only glanced at her and did not greet her. After walking around the sect, he saw quite a few cases of people using their strength to bully others. Moreover, the sect seemed to tacitly approve of the bullying and duels. If one didn't go to the duel arena, they couldn't kill one another. If one went to the duel arena, no one would pursue the matter, even if one was killed. After walking around for a day, she had a certain understanding of the cruelty of this hidden sect. Seeing that the sky was gradually darkening, she was about to head back when she saw two women walking in front of her. They were chatting and laughing as they walked. Their laughter could be heard from afar. She narrowed her eyes and walked, thinking that it would be better to pass by quietly, because one of the women was the woman named Zhu Ling. Unexpectedly, just as she passed by the two, Zhu Ling, who was holding her female companion's hand, stopped in her tracks. She turned around in surprise and called out with a smile, Senior Brother Wan? Fengjiu had no choice but to stop. She quickly turned around and glanced at Zhu Ling. She cupped her hands and bowed. Junior Sister Zhu. When she saw this, Zhu Ling covered her red lips and smiled coquettishly. She looked at Fengjiu with her beautiful eyes and said, So Senior Brother Wan still remembers me. I thought Senior Brother Wan didn't see me just now. Fengjiu smiled embarrassedly. Junior Marshal Sister Zhu? You must be joking. Junior Marshal Sister Zhu is as beautiful as a fairy. I just don't dare to look directly at you, afraid that I'll blaspheme you. There wasn't a single good person here. Even the most delicate women were like snakes and scorpions. As a woman, she was very clear that even if she provoked a man, she couldn't provoke a woman. It must be known that when a woman got serious, even a man wouldn't be her opponent. Hearing those praises, Zhu Ling smiled until her delicate body trembled. Her charming eyes looked at Fengjiu with a seductive charm. She walked forward and said, I've always thought that Senior Brother Wan wasn't good with words. I didn't expect you to make me burst with joy as soon as you open your mouth. That's because Junior Marshal Sister Zhu is as beautiful as a fairy. I'm only speaking the truth, Fengjiu hurriedly said. When she saw Zhu Ling walk forward, she took a step back and kept her distance. Chapter 3996. There's a difference between men and women. Fengjiu said as he took another step back. Hearing this, Zhu Ling smiled tenderly. She found it interesting and walked forward step by step until she was in front of Fengjiu. She said, Senior Wan, you just said that I'm as beautiful as a fairy, but now you're avoiding me like I'm a snake or a scorpion. You really hurt me. A woman standing to the side played with a strand of hair that fell in front of her chest. She looked at the scene in front of her with interest. Her beautiful eyes also sized up the man who kept retreating. However, although the other party's appearance could be considered handsome, his strength was not outstanding. Thus, she did not have any interest in him. Seeing that some people nearby were looking at them and whispering, Fengjiu smiled bitterly and said, "Junior sister, I don't think I've offended you?" Zhu Ling was startled. She smiled tenderly and asked, "Senior Wan, what do you mean?" Fengjiu sighed softly and seemed to be a little worried. He said, "Junior sister, not only are you beautiful, your talent is also outstanding. Otherwise, you wouldn't have been accepted as a true disciple in such a short period of time. A person like Junior Sister is like a fairy in my heart. I can only look up to you and not profane you. Moreover, my master's eldest disciple, Senior Brother Lin, has always been in love with Junior Sister. If he finds out about what happened today, I'm afraid that I won't have a good time in the future. Therefore, Junior Sister, please be magnanimous and let me go." Hearing this, Zhu Ling was startled. She then laughed tenderly and looked at Fengjiu with interest. She did not take another step forward. She just stood there and looked at Fengjiu with a smile. Finally, she said, "Senior Brother Ruan is really an interesting person. I still have something to do today, so I won't chat with Senior Brother. If Senior Brother Ruan meets Senior Brother Lin, tell him I'll go find him in 2 days." With that, she smiled and turned to walk towards the woman. The woman held her hand and walked forward. She asked, "Linger, why did you chat with him for so long? Her appearance is the only thing that's pleasing to the eye. Nothing else is worth looking at. Senior Wan is also an interesting person. Since we met, we should at least say hello," Zhu Ling replied with a smile. The two of them walked forward until they disappeared from Fengjiu's sight. Fengjiu retracted her gaze and didn't look at the people around her. Instead, she walked into the courtyard. However, the moment she entered the courtyard, she saw the man surnamed He sitting in the courtyard and drinking tea. He looked at her as if he was watching a good show. "I heard that Junior Sister Zhu was looking for you." Fengjiu looked at him in surprise. "No, I didn't. It's just that I bumped into her on my way back." And then Junior Marshal Sister Zhu asked about Senior Marshal Brother Lin. She wanted to complain a little. It had only been a short while, and the news had already spread to that woman looking for her. He played with the teacup and laughed. I heard that Junior Marshal Sister Zhu is very intimate with you. Although Junior Marshal Sister Zhu's figure is hot and beautiful, she's someone that Senior Marshal Brother Lin has taken a fancy to. You better not have any thoughts that you shouldn't have. Otherwise, you'll suffer. I definitely wouldn't dare to have such thoughts," she hurriedly said. Moreover, not to mention that she was a woman, even if she was a man, she wouldn't have any thoughts about him. "It's best that you don't dare." A voice came from behind. Fengjiu hurriedly turned around and respectfully called out, "Senior Marshal Brother Lin." Chapter 3997. The man surnamed Lin walked in with his hands clasped behind his back. He glanced at Fengjiu, then walked forward and sat down at the table in the courtyard. "Senior Lin, have some tea." The man surnamed, he poured a cup for him, then sat down beside him. Fengjiu sighed inwardly, but a smile appeared on her face. She walked forward and said, "Senior Lin, I met Junior Sister Zhu when I came back. She told me to tell you that she'll be looking for you in 2 days. You really just bumped into her on the way?" The man surnamed Lin stared at Fengjiu. Without waiting for Fengjiu to speak, his face darkened. "But did you deliberately go there to wait for her?" "Senior Lin, please don't misunderstand. It really was just a coincidence. Junior Sister Lin only said a few words to me, then asked me to pass on the message. It really was just that," she said anxiously. Then, she continued, "Only Senior Lin is worthy of someone like Junior Sister Lin. I know that I'm not strong enough, so how could I have such thoughts? I hope Senior Lin doesn't misunderstand." In the end, she managed to dispel the man's suspicion and hostility. After sending him off, she let out a sigh of relief. The man surnamed, he saw this and chuckled. "You're usually quiet, but I didn't expect you to be so eloquent when you talk." Hearing this, Fengjiu's eyes flashed. This was already the second person today who said something like this. It seemed that she had unknowingly brought her personality into this role. If this continued, they would probably start to suspect her. With today's warning, she had to be more careful in the days to come. In the next 2 days, she sorted out some of the connections of the man surnamed Ruan. She also heard a piece of news from the side. That night, the leaders of the sect would be discussing some matters in the side hall. When she heard this news, she decided to go and check it out first. That night, not long after she turned off the lights and rested, she changed in her night clothes and quietly left the courtyard, heading towards the higher levels of the sect. In the past 2 days, he had familiarized himself with the route, so he wasn't worried about getting lost. With her strength, no one could detect her ghost-like figure as she moved in the night. Moreover, she had concealed her aura and moved stealthily. In addition, there were not many people loitering around the sect at night. They had all returned to their own courtyards to rest and cultivate. Perhaps the people of this sect were too confident and felt that no one would be able to sneak in, so the security here was not very strict. This allowed Fengjiu to easily enter the side hall where the meeting was taking place. She quietly crouched on the roof of the side hall, peeking through the cracks of the roof to see the scene below. More than 10 men and women were sitting on the left and right sides of the hall. Some of them were old, and some looked very young. Of course, their real age was definitely not the same as the appearance they showed. She noticed that there were 3 beautiful women seated below. Their clothes were extremely revealing, and their beautiful eyes faintly carried a captivating charm. Moreover, their actions were slightly flirtatious. A gray-robed elder sat on the main seat. He held a dragon-headed walking stick in his hand. It looked like it was made of wood, but it also looked like it was carved out of something. Chapter 3998. The people sitting here were people who did not often appear in the sect. It could also be said that they were the true experts of the sect. Every one of them was much stronger than the venerables below. This was especially true for the old man sitting at the main seat. His strength had clearly reached the God King level. His reserved aura was filled with a dignified aura. This aura was different from the God King level experts like Azura King or even the owner of the auction house. The old man's aura was so powerful that it seemed like it had been accumulated over a long period of time. It was definitely not something an ordinary person could compare to. Even if they were all God Kings, the old man was probably one of the strongest. She could not help but frown when she saw the old man's aura. Since there were so many God Kings in this region, why was there no one who could become the ruler of this region? Putting aside the Azura King and the others who had already died, just the old man before her was definitely more than qualified to be the ruler of this region. However, if she had not come here, she would not have known that such a powerful God King was hidden in this hidden sect. Seeing that the people below had already begun chatting, she gathered her thoughts and listened carefully. The disciple who went out to gather information has already returned. The ghost Dr. Fengjiu, the Azure Dragon Sovereign, and the others have disappeared not far from us. I've been wondering whether they'll come for us in the past 2 days, a middle-aged man said with a grave expression. Why would they come for us? It's not like we've provoked them. A beautiful woman glanced at that person and smiled charmingly. However, I heard that the Azure Dragon Sovereign is a rare handsome man. It's said that he's like a god who has descended from the heavens. He's really extraordinary. I really want to see him. A tall, skinny man sitting opposite her sneered when he heard that. He said, "Don't even think about it. He's not someone you can dream about. Haven't you heard that the ghost Dr. Fengjiu is a publicly acknowledged beauty? With such a beauty by his side, do you think the Azure Dragon Sovereign would be interested in an old woman like you? No one will think you're mute if you don't speak." The woman's face darkened as she glared at that person. "What? Did I say anything wrong?" The man replied, "All right, I called you here to talk business, not to listen to your bickering." The old man, sitting on the main seat, frowned. He knocked the crutch in his hand on the ground, and the people sitting on his left and right became silent, not daring to be presumptuous. The old man glanced at everyone in the hall with his sharp and cold eyes and said, "I've received news from the Myriad Buddhist sect that the old bald donkey gave the ancient golden lotus to Fengjiu and asked Fungio to help them find the Saraira and Heart Sutra. As soon as these words were said, the atmosphere in the hall became tense. No one said anything. They only looked at each other, and their faces became more serious than before. "Will she find us here?" a man asked. Chapter 3999. Seeing his serious look, the crowd could not help but take it seriously. One of them asked, "Is she really that strong? Do we have to be afraid of her?" The old man held his walking stick with both hands and said in a deep voice, "I don't know if she is strong or not, but since she can kill Lord Azura and other divine kings, do you think she is easy to deal with? We're not weak. How do you know that we can't deal with her? She is just a woman. We haven't even fought with her yet. It's not appropriate for us to boost the morale of others and diminish our own," a middle-aged man said. Obviously, he did not think that he was inferior to a woman, even though they had not really fought. One of them listened to their conversation and kept his eyes closed. No one knew what he was thinking. After a long while, he looked at the old man in the main seat and asked, "Sectmaster, where is the Saraira now? Is it safe?" Hearing this, the people who were originally talking stopped. Their gazes moved slightly. They also looked at the old man in the main seat, waiting for his answer. They only knew that their sect had obtained the Saraira and had only seen it on the day they got it. Until now, no one had seen it again. No one knew where the Saraira and the Heart Sutra were hidden. The old man squinted his eyes and stroked his beard. He said, "It is in a safe place. You don't have to worry about it." Seeing that he was unwilling to say more, the man who spoke again. "Sectmaster, we are relieved that the relics are in our hands. However, as for the Heart Sutra, when does Sectmaster plan to take it out for us to cultivate? It is said that the Heart Sutra of the Myriad Buddhist sect can improve one's strength. After practicing it, one can learn anything quickly. Sectmaster should let us practice such a treasure. After all, the stronger we are, the stronger the sect will be. There is no hurry. Let's talk about it after we get rid of Fungio and the others. Now is not the best time to practice the Heart Sutra," the old man said slowly. The old man said slowly. He glanced at them and said, "Do your part well. As long as you contribute to the sect, I will not mistreat you." Since he had said so, the crowd did not say anything. They could only do as he ordered. Fungio, who was lying on the roof, heard everyone's words. She was a little surprised. She didn't expect that these people didn't know where the Saraira and the Heart Sutra were. It seemed that only the old man knew where these two things were. She did not think that he would keep such important things with him. If others knew it, there might be a breakthrough. However, it was the old man. It was a little troublesome. She gathered her thoughts and planned to go back and think of a way. However, as she moved, a tile under her feet, and it made a slight sound. However, it was this slight sound that attracted the attention of the people in the hall. It was the old man with the walking stick who reacted after hearing the slight movement. His half-squinted eyes instantly became as sharp as a sword, and the walking stick in his hand swung towards the direction where the sound came from. The others also reacted at that moment and shouted sternly, "Who's there?" Chapter 4000. The crutch was like a sharp sword as it shot up from below. With a whoosh, it broke through the roof of the great hall and headed straight for Fungio. Fungio had already dodged the attack while spinning. In addition, she had leaped into the air and put some distance between them. She had no intention of fighting them head-on. Hence, the moment the crutch flew towards her, she had already leaped into the air and dashed into the distance. When the people in the great hall rushed out and leaped onto the roof, they only saw a black figure disappear into the night. The speed was so fast that they were stunned. "Chase! We must catch this person." The old man had already arrived on the roof at some point in time. When he saw the black figure dashing away, he ordered the people around him to quickly give chase. Those people reacted and immediately chased in that direction. At the same time, they ordered people to guard the sect tightly, so that there was no possibility of that person leaving. However, after a while, the people who had chased after the black figure returned with furrowed brows. When they arrived in front of the old man, they said, that person ran away. We chased after him, but when we turned a corner, he was already gone." Hearing this, the old man's face darkened. A sinister look flashed across his eyes. He immediately shouted in an old but vigorous voice, "Guard that area tightly. Have people search immediately. He can't escape. He must still be in the sect." But looking at that figure, it should be a woman. A beautiful woman said. She frowned and pondered. Her body is light and her movements are nimble. It doesn't seem to be a man, but a woman. Hearing this, the people next to her were stunned. A woman? That can't be right. How could a woman be able to escape without a trace under our noses? You must be mistaken, right? It can't be wrong. That is indeed a woman. The woman said with certainty, "Even if a man's movements are nimble, he definitely can't be that light. It's definitely a woman." Hearing her say that it was a woman with such certainty, for a moment, everyone's faces froze. They all thought of one person at the same time. Fengjiu. That Fengjiu seemed to have disappeared. Could it be that he had already snuck into their sect? No. That shouldn't be possible. Their sect was very well hidden, and they had set up many formations and boundaries. Outsiders couldn't possibly enter. "Search," the old man said in a low voice. "This person is still in the sect. He can't escape. Take some men and search that area immediately." Yes, everyone responded and immediately scattered, quickly gathering the disciples to search. Right now, they were in a tense period. They didn't know where this person had come from, and from the looks of it, this person wasn't weak. After a while, he jumped down and returned. After a while, on the other side, after Fengjiu had shaken off the person who had been following her, she wanted to go to her courtyard. However, she didn't expect that the sect was already on high alert. The disciples had already been summoned and were searching. She avoided those people and quickly returned to her room in the courtyard. She took off her night clothes and boots and kept them in her space. Then, she lay on the bed to rest. Chapter 4001. What's wrong? Did something happen? On the other side of the courtyard, the man with the surname, he walked out after hearing the knocking on the door. When he saw a group of people barging in with torches in their hands and murderous looks on their faces, he couldn't help but be dumbfounded. A spy has infiltrated the sect and is currently searching everywhere. "Where are the people in your courtyard?" A middle-aged man in the lead asked in a deep voice. His gaze turned and fell on Fengjiu's room. Just as he was about to walk over, the closed door opened and a man with a slightly disheveled face, who was sleeping soundly, walked out with a coat draped over his shoulders. "Senior Marshal Brother He, what happened?" Fengjiu had a sleepy look on his face, as if he had buried his head in his sleep, causing his hair to be a little messy. "They say a spy has infiltrated the sect. Marshal Uncle Wang is currently leading people to search." The man with the surname, he was originally sleeping soundly and was holding back his anger when he was woken up. However, the person leading the group was a martial uncle, so he didn't dare to be impudent or dissatisfied. When Fengjiu heard that a spy had infiltrated, he couldn't help but be shocked. He looked at them and exclaimed in a low voice, "What? A spy has infiltrated? How could a spy have infiltrated the sect? Have they caught him? Should we go and help?" The middle-aged man in the lead stared at Fengjiu and sized him up before asking, "There are only two of you in this courtyard?" "Yes, Marshal Uncle Wang. It's just the two of us." The man with the surname, he replied, "Put on your clothes properly and follow us to search." He instructed the two of them and turned to walk out at the same time. Yes. The two of them hurriedly replied and returned to their rooms to quickly put on their clothes. They took out their swords and followed behind the middle-aged man to other places. Once they were outside, the man with the surname, he saw that almost the entire sect was searching. Because it was dark at night, everyone had a torch in their hands, illuminating the entire sect as bright as day. "Marshal Uncle Wang, what kind of spy has infiltrated? Why is there such a large formation?" The man with the surname, he asked curiously. "It's a woman," the middle-aged man walking in front said. "A woman?" The man with the surname, he was even more surprised. "What kind of woman is so powerful? How dare you sneak into our sect?" The middle-aged man in front didn't answer him. He just said in a deep voice, "Pay more attention to the female disciples. See if there are any suspicious ones. The higher-ups have already issued orders. We must find this person." Hearing this, everyone immediately replied, "Yes." Fengjiu followed behind, secretly rejoicing that she was currently disguised as a man, thus successfully changing the target. In addition, when she escaped, she deliberately went in another direction to mislead them, but she did not expect that under the cover of black clothes, there were still people who could see that she was a woman. That night, she followed them and searched everywhere, but she didn't find anything until dawn. This was natural. After all, the person they were looking for was among them. Other than herself, who else would be able to discover her? However, this night allowed her to know the strength and foundation of this hidden sect. This caused her to be even more vigilant in the future. However, that relic and heart sutra were with that old man. This point made it really difficult for her to make a move. Chapter 4002. The team that they had been following had searched for an entire night, but had not found anything. Just then, they met another team in front of them. The two leaders met and spoke for a while. Not long after, the leader said to them, "All right, go back and rest." Someone could not help but ask, "Uncle Master, have we caught the spy?" "Not yet. I think this spy has hidden herself very well. It won't be easy to find her. You could go back first. I'll instruct you about the next arrangements." The middle-aged man said and gestured for them to go back first. Seeing this, the crowd looked at each other before dispersing one after another. In the great hall, the old man sat on the main seat. The people on his left and right sat quietly. Compared to last night, they did not look too good today. While if a spy had escaped right under their noses, they would not look good. Furthermore, there were not just one or two of them. There were so many of them here, but they still could not catch her. "So you're saying that you haven't found her?" The old man asked and raised his eyelids to look at them. "Yes, we've searched everywhere, but we couldn't find her. That person seemed to have disappeared into thin air. We don't know where she went." One of them said, not daring to look directly into the old man's eyes. "Useless." The old man's suppressed anger suddenly exploded. He slammed the walking stick in his hand heavily on the ground. A wave of pressure accompanied by an air current rushed out, instantly causing the faces of the people sitting in the hall to turn pale. "Sect leader, please calm down. That person must still be here. We'll definitely find her." A middle-aged man hurriedly stepped forward and said, "We couldn't find her last night. Do you think that we'll be able to find her today?" The old man's voice was gloomy as he shouted. His sharp gaze swept across them. Finally, he said angrily, "If we don't find this person, it'll be like a thorn in our flesh. She'll cause no peace in our sect. What's her motive for hiding in our sect? Does she have any accomplices? Will she spread the news about our sect out? These are all hidden dangers. Just because you promise to find her doesn't mean that we'll definitely find her. What I want is to destroy this hidden danger." Yes, everyone could only agree. Seeing the old man leave with a flick of his sleeve, the pressure in the air dissipated with his departure. Only then did they let out a sigh of relief. They looked at each other and were silent for a while. Then one of them asked, "How can we find this person?" "Sectmaster is right. If we don't find them, we really don't know when this hidden danger will happen." "I wonder how much of our conversation she overheard last night," a beautiful woman said thoughtfully. "Maybe he heard all of it, or maybe he only heard half of it," a middle-aged man said. He was also thinking in his heart, what method could he use to find that person? The other beautiful woman paused, looked at them, and asked, "Who do you think she is?" Hearing her question, one of them said, "Could it be that you think this person is that ghost Dr. Fengjiu?" Chapter 4003. Hearing her words, everyone fell silent. They had their suspicions, but they felt that it was impossible for someone to sneak into their sect so quickly. However, they still hadn't been able to find this person, so they couldn't help but suspect that this person might really be Fengjiu. If it really is her, then we'll lure her out. A middle-aged man said, his eyes shining. You mean to use the Saraira or the Heart Sutra to lure her out? A person next to him asked. Before the other person could speak, he continued. However, those two items are in the sect master's hands. We don't have them. If we use a fake, forget about Fungio. Even we won't take the bait. The person who spoke said, we definitely can't fool her with a fake. Since we want to lure her out, we naturally have to have the sect master take out the real thing. Even if we don't take out the Saraira, we have to take out the Heart Sutra. Otherwise, we can't keep dragging this out, right? Everyone looked at each other. After a final discussion, they decided to talk to the sect master. On the other side, after Fungio returned to the side room in the courtyard, he took out a talisman from the space and transformed it into a puppet with this appearance. Then, he put on a black robe and covered his face. Only then did he jump out of the back window and head toward the main peak where the sect master resided. Unlike the others, the sect master lived in an immortal's cave. There was a formation set up around it, as well as a barrier. It could be said that without his permission, no one would be able to get close. Although it was broad daylight, she was proficient in concealing her aura, coupled with her strange and exquisite movement techniques. Unless she encountered the pillars of the sect, no one would be able to find her. Now that she was familiar with the path within the sect, she easily arrived at the main peak, where the sect master's cave was located. She looked at the two cultivators guarding outside, then picked up 2 stones and threw them in the other direction. Who's there? The two of them shouted and looked in that direction, but they found nothing. The two of them looked at each other, then walked back and returned to their original place to guard. What they didn't know was that in just a short while, Fungio had already flashed behind them and headed towards the array in front of the cave residence. When the two of them came back and saw that there was no movement in the surroundings, they didn't have much suspicion. After all, this was the sect leader's cave residence. Who would dare to casually come here? At this time, the old man in the cave residence was sitting cross-legged and practicing. He did not allow others to practice the Heart Sutra of the Myriad Buddhist sect, but he was already practicing it himself. However, the Heart Sutra was in Sanskrit. He was not proficient in Sanskrit, so he could only translate it bit by bit. So far, he had only translated the first level of the Heart Sutra, but it was enough for him to practice first. He, who was concentrating on practicing the Heart Sutra, did not know that a figure had quietly come to his cave residence. Fungio looked inside the cave residence from outside. She had a certain understanding of the cautious nature of the sect master of this reclusive sect. In this sect, in addition to people guarding outside his cave residence, there were also formations and barriers. She knew that the Saraira and the Heart Sutra must be hidden in this cave residence. The other party's strength was extremely strong, so she could not release her divine awareness to investigate. However, just as she was about to go inside to investigate, she heard voices coming from outside. Chapter 4004. The two cultivators standing guard outside dared not delay. After replying, one of them walked inside, his figure disappearing into the magic array. The other person remained in his original position. They were the sect master's trusted aides, and only they could enter the array formation behind them. However, even they did not have the qualifications to enter the cave. Even if they wanted to report, they could only do so outside the cave. The middle-aged man who came watched the cultivator go in and disappear. His eyes lit up. Even people like them didn't have the chance to explore this cave. They really didn't know what it was like inside. Although they were curious, no one dared to explore because the sect master had given a death order. Anyone who trespassed would die. Because of this, even if they were curious, they could only suppress their curiosity. After Fungio heard the sound from outside, his figure flashed, and he instantly disappeared into the void. Sect Master, the head elder is here. He said he has something to discuss with the sect master. The cultivator spoke from outside the cave. His voice carried a trace of spirit power, which allowed his voice to pass through the cave's stone door and into the cave. The sect leader cultivated for a while, but because the person hiding in the sect had not been caught, he could not calm down. He tried a few times, but still could not enter the state. Thus, he could only exhale and stand up. At this moment, he heard a voice coming from outside. When he heard the words outside, he frowned. Got it. Tell him to wait. After his voice came out, he didn't immediately go outside. Instead, he waited for the cultivator outside to respond before going outside. With a flick of his hand, the walking stick that was placed at the side fell into his hand. Using the walking stick, he walked outside step by step. When he arrived outside, he pressed the mechanism inside the stone door. The stone door slowly opened, and he walked out from inside. Seeing that the cultivators waiting outside had already left, he reached out and pressed the secret compartment on the wall outside. The stone door closed once more. Only then did he walk out of the barrier with one hand behind his back and the other holding his walking stick. He stepped into the array formation and arrived outside. What is it now? Didn't we just finish our discussion? The old man looked at the person in front of him impatiently. Why did he come to find him again when he hadn't caught the person? Sect leader. The middle-aged man bowed and said, Everyone would like to invite the sect master over again. We have an idea to lure out the person hiding in the dark, so. Hearing this, the old man's face was still gloomy, but he did not say anything. He only said, Let's go. It's best if this method can really solve the problem. The middle-aged man didn't dare to say more and followed behind him. After they left, Fengjiu came out of space and walked towards the stone door. Her mind was thinking about the secret compartment that the old man pressed on the wall. She searched for it for a while but couldn't find it. She searched carefully again and finally opened the stone door slowly. Seeing the stone door open, she restrained her aura and walked in. However, just as she stepped on the ground, arrows shot out from the walls on her left and right. She immediately rushed forward, and her figure moved forward, avoiding the arrows that were shot from the left and right. After a few breaths, the arrows stopped, and the wall returned to normal, as if the mechanism had never appeared. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.